Hello and a very warm welcome to Weekly Current Affairs. Today is Saturday and we'll be taking up those current affairs which have been figured out in various newspapers. So as you know that this is a series from Monday to Saturday, we come up with various subjects current affairs, and every Saturday I, Madhusudan Reddy, take up the miscellaneous concepts that have been figured out in Hindu, Indian Express and other newspapers. So today we are going to take up few articles that are most important and most relevant for UPSC examination, as most of the articles are in this week mostly from environment, ecology and some aspects of physics as well as the aspects of astronomy and space. So here our first article we will be talking about is the Chikmagaluru hill station, which is bathed with the Neelakurinji flowers, which we have already had a brief in your previous sessions. Now we will discuss in little more detail from the examination point of view. Our second article, which is talking about the cotton plantation issues which have been present in the Karnataka region, where these cotton plantation crops has now identified to be one of the threat towards the food security, right, and the cash security of these crops as well. Next one is the Bengaluru aquatic ecosystem, which is choked with pollutants, and this is the fifth continuous year where the Bengaluru lakes are filled with the eutrophication. So in this context, let us quickly move, and there is also another article regarding the Changteng wildlife sanctuary which has been present in the Ladakh region, which has also been identified to be declared as one of the area for the dark sanctuaries. Now what is a dark sanctuary? And this news was in news, this article was in news even in the last month also. So again the same news articles are being figured out into various newspapers again and again, so those articles also becomes very important. So let's begin. The first article which talks about is a Hindu newspaper published article which says that the cotton growers in Yadgiri is one of the region in Karnataka, along with Karnataka and some parts of the southern India, where the cotton plantation is going for a complete change in its structural composition because of the moisture intensity increase. So this change in the structural composition in literal terms and textbook terms, it means that the leaves are turning out to be brown and they are going to die. So the Ministry of Agriculture and the Department of Biotechnology have come up with some solutions regarding this. What are they? We are going to look into. Now before we look into this article, firstly we need to know that the growing conditions of a cotton kya hai. See, growing conditions of a cotton, everyone knows that it is well grown in a black soil, but is it the only black soil that gives a good cotton yield? The answer is no. Along with black soil, usually the soil should be thick enough where the plant can grow deep enough, and number one, it is deep soils, and it should also have heavy clay conditions. Ideally black soil ek achhi vegetation hoti hai, but it can also be grown in other soils. There should not be any waterlogging when this plantation is grown. Along with the climatic conditions for the growing of the cotton plantation is somewhere around 25 to 30 degrees Celsius on an average, it should be there. Now the biggest challenge for the growing of this plant is long vegetation period. Now what do you mean by vegetation period? In a minute or so we'll discuss it. And also it needs ample sunshine, which is near about 210 frost free days. It needs 210 frost free days. It simply means it cannot be grown in those areas which are near to the cold regions. It also needs dry climate where the cotton cultivation is a challenge, because in the initial days when it is sown it needs ample amount of water, but when it comes to the boll time, boll in the sense when the seedling starts to give the boll, the cotton, from then on the cotton plant need to be dried, it no longer needs much water. So that's why it needs a varied climatic conditions in terms of rainfall. If you see, it needs on an average 50 centimeters to 100 centimeters of rainfall per year, right? And it also needs dry conditions plus wet conditions in the beginning, right? So that's why it turns out to be a challenge. But now if you see, there has been some climatic change indications which we already got in the last week or so. We have heard about the advancement of the northeast monsoon season. When you have advancement in the northeast monsoon season, the rainfall was extreme. We also got to see in most parts of India, and that rainfall has triggered a downfall for this crop. Now how this has done? In simple terms, the cotton yield, if you look into, let me show you. First, once you start to grow a seed of cotton, it takes somewhere around 5 to 10 days for the seed to come out. in the form of seedling, and then the plant starts to give flowers or buddings at around 40 to 50 days, and after 7 to 80 days the flowering consumes, it starts to give out small amounts of bowls. That the flower comes out and small buds of cotton can be seen, and finally it is around 100 to 105 days where you can get to see the cotton bowls. After 150 or 160 days, on an ideal scale there are two different types of cotton which can be grown in 60 to 120 days also, and another type of cotton which is mostly grown in India is 150 to 160 days ka yield chahiye. But already the cotton plantations which have been put under seedling last year, around 6 odd months before, that has been in this stage where the bowl has come out. Now from here on the cotton plantation do not need much of a rainfall, right? So when you start to give more rainfall here, what happens to the crop is the crop stem starts to grow wide, and then the cotton starts to fall down, and if there is too much of moisture here, the moisture kills the plant or it kills the yield. So because of that, here you got to see a new disease, that is red leaf disease. Now because of the red leaf disease, the cotton yield is now considered that it is going to get destroyed within the next 15 to 20 odd days. So here came one of our agricultural department which said that we are going to save this plant by giving diammonium diphosphate conditions. Also the long vegetative growth cotton, usually whenever a plant has a long vegetation growth in simple terms means before it starts to give a flower. To give a flower itself it takes somewhere around 50 to 60 days. So the plant need to be protected a lot here, and another area where this cotton needs so much of protection is no rainfall in the last few months. So because of this, there is intense rainfall because of the advancement of the northeast monsoon season, and also the moisture present in the soil quantity has increased in the southern part. So this has led to the downfall of cotton yield, right? Now these are the challenges. The Ministry of Agriculture said that now let us go for diammonium diphosphate, nitrate phosphate and other nitrogen induced chemical fertilizers where they are going to give it free for the farmers. Here in this article, what is more important is the Fasal Bima Yojana. This Fasal Bima Yojana for the Kharif crops is around 2% of their premium, and for the Rabi crop it is 1.5% of the premium. But cotton plantation being a cash crop, it is a cash crop. The yield and the returns are very varied yield and varied returns, right? So let us quickly see what is the issue with respect to the definition of a crop. See, not all crops have similar kind of insurance yields, and not all crops will have same kind of output. Those crops which are usually considered to be cash crops, they have good yield but they are not meant for consuming. So in those conditions the premium for the insurance is also high. So one such crop is cotton crop. So cotton crop growers, what do they do is, in spite of pooling in large amounts of money for insurances, they do not go for buying the insurances because they take that risk. 6 months of yield, near about 6 months of yield, 6 months of time it takes for the yield to come out. For that 6 months, usually if you go in for a rice plantation or any food crops, every 3 to 4 months you will get an output. But this is a risk weight asset ratio. In this, the risk is high and the reward is high. So the departments has now come up with cash crop should definitely have Fasal Bima Yojana facilities for this. So the Agriculture Ministry has asked all the cash crops to go for Fasal Bima Yojana insurances, right? So this is something which has been discussed. Fasal Bima Yojana, we have already done it in the last few weeks, and it has also been dealt in the previous week's current affairs in various days. So that's why I'm not taking up, I have only given an overview. For this, you can also go and watch the Fasal Bima Yojana classes which have been taken in the economics classroom as well. Economics weekly current affairs as well. Now let's quickly discuss the what difference between a food crop, cash crop, plantation crop and horticulture crop. Firstly, a food crop is a crop which is meant for growing food and it maintains a good security for the food as well. right? A state's food security is dependent upon the food crops. That's why they are also food crops which we consume on a daily basis. Example, see your rice, pulses, dal, whatever you see, the edible seeds, they are considered to be food crops. Now coming to the cash crops are those crops which you do not eat in a direct manner, but it is helpful in enhancing the quality of life. That is your oil seeds, yeah, cotton, jute, these are the examples of your cash crops. Usually cash crops do have long gestation periods. If you start to grow, it will take somewhere around 6 to 10 months to come out with a crop. These are usually the cash crops. On an average, it needs somewhere around 6 months. They give good yield. They also get in good cash on returns. Next is your plantation crops. Plantation crops can be your palm oil, coconut, coffee, tea, rubber, cardamom. The major difference between the cash crops and the plantation crops is, plantation crops, if you once plant, these crops will give you yield for near about 7 to 10 years. Okay? Once you start to plant, you have to take care of these plantations, and they are large estates, need so much of investment. So only few farmers, rich farmers, can go for these kind of plantation crops. Next is your horticulture crops. Horticulture crops are like vegetables, your onion or fruits. These are considered to be horticulture. ये भी mentioned है आपका article में. Now coming to the next article here. See, next article is about the Chikmagaluru hill station, which was in news. That is your Neelakurinji flowers. They are all blooming the southern part of the hill stations. So what is this Neelakurinji flower? Neelakurinji flower is a flower which gives out gregarious flowering. What do you mean by this gregarious flowering? Gregarious flowering means whenever a plant or whenever a particular seed or whenever a particular grass yield that starts to give out so much of flowering in the very wide area. You take the southern part of India. In the southern part of India, mostly it is Nilgiris, the major chunk of hills that are present between both Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats, and these are hills which connect both the Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats. So these gregarious flowering of Neelakurinji flowers are taking place in the Shola forest. So what do you mean by Shola forest? A Shola forest is a forest where you find the forest in the valley of the mountains, not in the top. That means you find the forest in the valleys. Okay? In the valley forest you find them, and these kind of forests are called Shola. And the significance of this Neelakurinji flowers is it do not have seeds. No seeds. Once in every 12 years this flower starts to bloom, and once it blooms a very wide area. Entire Nilgiri ranges spreading across 5 national parks and also 3 different states, ranging across around 10 odd wildlife sanctuaries. This is a gregarious flowering. Now what is the significance of gregarious flowering? See, for 12 odd years there is no such kind of flowers. All of a sudden when the flower comes, there will be intense advancement of other species which dependent upon this flower. So let us take an example of a similar case study about the bamboo gregarious flowering. Bamboo gregarious flowering is a flowering activity you will get to see in the northeastern part of India. Okay? In the northeastern part of India, usually every 50 to 30 odd years there is a gregarious flowering that takes place with respect to bamboo. And bamboo is one such grass plant, or these days it is minus forest produce plant. If once it flowers, it means in its lifetime it is going to flower only once or twice, and after that the bamboo plantations die. So the bamboo plantation, whenever they start to flower, they flower in a very large areas, near about hundreds of kilometers area they will flower. When they started to flower, the content of starch in those flowers is very high. This starch starts to attract rats and rodents around the area. So because of this, in that particular year, the rats which came for the rodents which came for the starch, the concentration of starch is more, they'll start to eat away everything, all the flowers that are present. Because of which the productivity and the reproductive capabilities of these rodents increases, and they starts to replicate more in number. Imagine earlier there were only 100 rats, now these 100 rats will turn out to be 1000 rats just in a matter of an year. So the very next year the population of rats and rodents will be more. They will be in search of these flowers, but this flowering will happen once in 20-30 years. So in those cases what happens is that the rats will now search for food across the places, whether it is in your homes, in the farm fields, anywhere, wherever the starch content is grown, they'll start to go and eat. Because of which there is a problem for food security, and this problem for food security is the biggest challenge in the northeastern region. So on one scale, the bamboo flowering is a good thing that is happening, that the new bamboo trees are going to grow in that particular area. But on the other side, it is also a challenging task in terms of food security. A similar kind of activity you will also get to see in the Neelakurinji area as well. Whenever these Neelakurinji flowers, they start to bloom out in once in 12 years, it is generally understood that there are some small species, the concentration of species, small girgits which are present in this area, their population increases, because of which unforeseen diseases can also be seen. And it is also having a high calorific value. It is said that the Neelakurinji flowers can also be used in some medicinal properties. Certain researchers also came up in the newspaper. So it has both positive and negative activities, but for tourism, it is one of the good blooming area, good blooming for tourism as well, along with the blooming of your Neelakurinji flowers, right? So this is all about your Neelakurinji flowers. The possibility of these kind of questions can be asked in your preliminary examination is very, very high. And the next article that has made some good news is the Bengaluru aquatic ecosystems. Jitne bhi lakes hai, near about there are 30 odd lakes in Bengaluru, and since last 5 years there are more than 35 incidences of eutrophication, and this is a very common activity in the cities. So what is this eutrophication? In this context, there are also terms that have been figuring out in the article, that is biological oxygen demand kya hai, chemical oxygen demand kya hai. We are going to look into this, and we have also try to give out some particular solutions to these kind of problems. Firstly, let us try to understand the problem of Bengaluru. Bengaluru is a city of lakes as well, but this Bengaluru lakes, because of the increase in the concentration of population, there is more outflow or inflow into the ocean, into the lakes with respect to the pollutants, right? So when these pollutants have been increased, these pollutants are also being discharged into water. Now when you discharge water into the pollutants, the process of eutrophication starts. Now first let me tell you what exactly is eutrophication. Eutrophication is nothing but whenever a water body has more number of nutrients, that water body will start to bloom with some algae. That algae which is present on the surface will not let the sun rays to reach the bottom, because of which the dissolved oxygen in the water, it also becomes less, and there will be COD, the concentration of COD will also be varied. So in this context, let us first quickly see the process of eutrophication and how exactly it happens. See, it can happen in 7 different steps. Firstly, when you start to increase the supply of the nutrients, that nutrient supply is nothing but your sewage. When you send more amount of sewage into lakes, into water, the phosphate material, nitrate material and other pollutants, that increases the concentration. They are also acting as a nutrients, because of which there is more growth of plants you will get to see. Okay? The first step which involves the growth of eutrophication is increase in nutrient supply. Once the nutrient supply is increased, then takes the algal bloom. Okay? And algal bloom will lead to the saprophytic or saprotropic microbes to grow. So this is nothing but your decomposers. These are your decomposers. So when the saprophytic concentration is increased, this will lead to the increased biological demand. Now what do you mean by biological demand? Biological oxygen demand is nothing but, if at all, the requirement of the oxygen in the water is more. That is, in simple terms, this is biological oxygen demand is more. So if you start to add more nutrients to the water, will the biological oxygen demand increases or decreases? Please comment down in the comment section. I asked a question that if you start to increase the nutrients into the water, will the biological oxygen demand increase or will the biological oxygen demand decrease? Please comment in the comment section. I'll comment back, I'll give you the answers in the comment section as well. So usually when you start to increase the biological oxygen demand, it is an indication that the oxygen required to decompose the organic matter within the water, it is more. So every plant or every living organism which is present within the water, it requires some amount of oxygen to decompose the material of organic in the water, to decompose it. So whenever, if the concentration of oxygen is less, then that is what you are demanding more. In simple terms, if there is more nutrients which you have brought into the lake, then you need more oxygen to decompose it. So if you increase the nutrients, usually you will need more amount of oxygen to decompose the same material. So that is your biological oxygen demand. Now here, once if BOD increases, then you need to deoxygenate. What do you mean by deoxygenation? Deoxygenation is nothing but the reduction in the oxygen composition in the water, right? And there are a couple of more steps which, whenever this deoxygenated water increases, the turbidity in the water also increases. What do you mean by turbidity? In simple terms, eutrophication will increase the turbidity concentration in the water. Turbidity here means the water will get more viscous. When they get more viscous, it is very difficult for the water to move easily. So it is generally understood that the viscosity of water will also lead to increase in the concentration of waves in those waters, right? They make big waves. Usually the wave concentration in the water will increase and the penetration of the sunlight will get reduced, right? So the next process or next step which involves is your turbidity increases, and lastly, ultimately this will lead to the reduction in biodiversity. So these are the challenges that you will get to see whenever there is eutrophication process. Now the lakes of Bengaluru are undergoing this process. So along with this, if this is the problem, there should also be a solution, right? Now the solutions for these kind of problems can be the understanding of biological oxygen demand, chemical oxygen demand, and going for certain new technologies which can counter these processes. So one of the natural process in which you can fight this eutrophication is through growing of water hyacinths on a seasonal basis. Water hyacinth is nothing but a plant which will take up all the nutrients that are present in the water, and then every season you start to clear those water hyacinth plants in that particular lake. So because of that, the water turns out to be pure, and also there can be employment given for cleaning of that particular water bodies. So this is a whole in all holistic idea, but there are also technological interventions which can be used. Instead, going for a solution of after the post problem, instead we can also prevent these kind of eutrophication processes. How is that we will see in a minute or two. Before that, let us once understand the concept of biological oxygen demand. Here the definition of the biological oxygen demand says that biological oxygen demand is the amount of dissolved oxygen needed by the microorganisms to break down the organic material which is present in the water, right? Suppose there are some species which are present in the water. These species, they also break down the pollutants, or they also break down the organic matter which is present within them. Now how much amount of oxygen is required by these species to break down that organic matter is nothing but your BOD. Now in simple terms, if you are saying that BOD is increasing, that means the concentration of pollution is also increased, right? Directly or indirectly, you are coming to a conclusion that BOD increases, the concentration of the pollution also increases. Now that is your BOD. There is also another definition which is called as chemical oxygen demand. These are two terms which can be used in identifying the concentrations of the pollution and how much amount of energy is required to clean that water body. So the chemical oxygen demand is an analysis of measurement of oxygen depletion capacity of water, which is sample containment in an organic or organic matter में जितना भी चाहिए होते, right? In simple terms, specifically what does it do is it measures the equivalent amount of oxygen required to chemically break down the components of the organic matter, right? So this is what is your chemical oxygen demand. There is a difference between BOD and COD. See, BOD is for organic material, ये है आपका organic material के लिए, but COD chemical oxygen demand, it is for non biodegradable organics. This is the first difference. And the second difference is BOD uses oxidizing microorganisms, but chemical oxygen demand is nothing but instead of that organic microorganism or organic matter where it is broken by microorganisms in the BOD, it is chemical compositions are used in the COD, right? And nextly, it is toxic substances जो है, it is affected by toxic substances, but this COD is not affected by toxic substances. Usually the incubation time period for COD is less, but the incubation time period for the BOD is more. So that is the major difference. Now let's come to the solutions. There are also other problems associated with eutrophication. Eutrophication always leads to a concept called biomagnification. ये biomagnification of Bengaluru. What is this biomagnification in simple terms? Let me try to explain you. For example, there is a mayfly, and mayfly is one of a type of a species, and it starts to eat the small species which are present in the water. They take up the pollutants. These pollutants are taken by the mayfly. When mayfly takes the pollutants, that is eaten by the bluegill. Bluegill is a big fish, little. It starts to eat this small species, and overall this fish is eaten by the bass. Usually bass is eaten by us human beings. In this, while it is being in this food chain, the concentration, that means the pollution which is present here, for every species the concentration of pollution increases. Concentration of pollutants increase, and ultimately it is the human being which is going to take those pollutants in a direct or indirect way. Now this human being have taken pollutions from the mayfly, bluegill, bass. So collectively all this pollution concentration, if you eat it, it is going into your body. Now let us also look into the concentrations in this manner. The concentration simply says the highest concentration. You see, this person, sorry, the mayfly, it has little less concentration of pollution in it. Now when it is taken by another fish, it has more concentration. The concentration keeps on increasing. Ultimately the highest concentration will always be in the human beings. Right. So instead of human being eating this species, there can also be some decomposers or detrovirus animals that can eat these plants, right, or that can eat this fish. So when it is eaten by detrovirus related plants, or it is eaten by eagle, they have the highest concentrations, right? Now these kind of food chains are also having great impact in Bengaluru ecosystem, the article says. Now coming to the solutions which the Bengaluru city should go for is the sewage treatment trickle filter beds. Now what do you mean by sewage filter trickle filter beds? Every local area should have this bed. In this bed there are certain stones that will be used. Now a layer of stones, beneath that layer you will put a biofilm. This biofilm will help in anaerobically digested bacteria, which usually takes up all the pollutants, and that pollutants need to be outflown every few days. So this can be the solution. Nearby lakes, any discharge that is going in, they can set up these kind of plants. Now the other way around is the bacterial destruction by bacteriophages. Now what do you mean by bacterial destruction by bacteriophages? In simple terms, you are going to create a virus. This virus is going to eat a bacteria. So usually it is bacteria which create the eutrophication processes and also some algae. If you can create a virus, that virus which it can eat bacteria, it will start to decompose, and the multiplication of this virus grows at a faster rate, right? So that is nothing but bacterial destruction by bacteriophage. It is virus eating a bacteria or a bacteria eating another bacteria, right? So this is one of another alternative method. Now coming to the next article, this article is a very important article for prelims. It is in the Ladakh region. We are going for a dark sky reserve. It is a proposed one. It has not yet been notified. So this is present in Changtang Wildlife Sanctuary. It has come into news again and again. Why? The three autonomous bodies, which are Ladakh Union Territory Administration Body, Ladakh Union Territory Autonomous Hill Body Development Council, along with the Indian Institute of Astrophysics. These three bodies came together and they have signed. Finally, the budgetary allocations have been allotted to this Changtang Wildlife Sanctuary's Hanle in Ladakh, which is a dark sky reserve. Right, now in this dark sky reserve, what are you planning to do? The government is planning to do a research in the deep space missions by observatory centers which we are going to set up. Already we have an observatory setup here. That observatory setup is handled by Indian Institute of Astrophysics. They take care of they study the deep space visualizations. Right. Now what is the benefit for India? The benefit for India is it will boost the astrotourism in India and will be one of the world's highest located sites for optical infrared and gamma ray telescopes. ठीक है, already we have this infrared and gamma ray telescopes which are placed in the Hanle, but now we are going for some additional measures and we are going to increase the size also, right? Now in this context we should also look into those areas of prelims where the possible questions can be asked. Firstly, let us look into this wildlife sanctuary. Why is this wildlife sanctuary in news instead the Changtang Hanle Reserve? See guys, this is your Union Territory of Ladakh. In the Union Territory of Ladakh, there are some disputed areas, right? These are your disputed areas, and here you have a lake. This is your So Morori, and you also have Kangri peaks, So Morori lakes. It is this Changtang Wildlife Sanctuary is the area where the Hanle Astrophysics Center is also present. Now they are planning to declare this wildlife sanctuary area as also the dark sky reserves. Now this dark sky reserve is an area where there should not be any pollution. If you have pollution there, it is difficult for you to look into the deep space. So usually Ladakh is one of the highest areas in India where a plateau, it's a Changtang plateau. On this plateau, if you set up a observatory center, it is very easy for us to look into the deep space. In similar way, we have already had one of the astrophysics units. Now in this context, we should also look into some Changtang Wildlife Sanctuary importances. Firstly, the Somorori Lake, the Kangri peaks, the highest peaks, even the Indus River also passes through this Changtang Wildlife Sanctuary. Now it lies on the Ladakh Changtang plateau where the lowest elevation itself is I'm talking about the lowest elevation itself is 4,300 odd meters. It is exactly 4260 meters, right? And Indus River also passes through it. Along with it, the Changtang Wildlife Sanctuary is home to near about 11 lakes and 10 marshes. 11 lakes and 10 marshes. It is Somorori, it is also a wetland. So it is a zone of wetlands. Near about 7 wetlands are present in this region. So it is one of the important areas as well. So if you look into, it is said that the park is aiming for 16,000 square kilometers and it passes across to the Ladakh. It is one of the largest wildlife reserves in the world alongside the Northeast Greenland National Park in the Greenland. So in the Greenland also you have a similar kind of national park which is present at the high altitude. At this high altitudes usually the size of the national parks will be small, but for Leh Ladakh this area is a very big area, right? And let us quickly look into some important aspects. One, Hanle Dark Sky Reserve, which is a spanning 22 kilometer radius area. Now Indian Astronomical Institute along with Ladakh Union Territory and Council Development, the Hill Area Development Council, which is also a subpart where Ladakh Autonomous Hill Development Council, this is taking care of the development of this project as well. So all in all, these are some important preliminary tidbit points where you can utilize for your examination. If you think that we have added some value to your preparation, please press that like button. And if you would like to know about more such topics, if you have any interest in the topics, please comment in the comment section. That topics will be taken up by us. And also please make sure to write a question, which will be posting a question on this in the Seize the Mains initiative. The Seize the Mains initiative link can be found out in the link below, where you can take up the questions from these articles and write that answers will be evaluated by our experts. So here let us look into the Seize the Mains question. Today's Seize the Mains question is this. What is eutrophication and recommend some scientific solutions. Right? Recommend some scientific solutions. What is eutrophication? Challenges of the global cities in dealing with the eutrophication. In this context, please recommend some scientific solutions. This is the question for your Seize the Mains. Please make sure to address the question by writing in your own words, where you can upload. The link will be present in the description, and our experts will be evaluating your paper at free of cost. Thank you guys, and see you next week. If you want any topic, please comment in that comment section. I'll be coming and taking up for you. See you.